Hi, welcome to our collaborative panel on conceptual metaphors by Lauren, Jess, Mia and Millie. Today we're going to talk about conceptual metaphors. We'll start by talking about what conceptual metaphors are, then how and why we use them. Then we'll talk about conceptual metaphors in advertising, then conceptual metaphors in political speeches. We'll then explore metaphors in COVID-19 articles and finish up looking at metaphors in travel writing. So, what are conceptual metaphors? We've prepared a short video which will hopefully explain it to you.
What are conceptual metaphors? Conceptual metaphor is a metaphor in which one idea is presented in terms of another. An abstract concept is often the target, and a more concrete or tangible concept is the source. Why do we use conceptual metaphors? We use conceptual metaphors to present complex, abstract concepts in a way that is more relatable and easier to understand. What are some examples of conceptual metaphors? Happiness is portrayed with metaphors of light, for example, beaming with joy, glowing, face lighting up with joy. Anger is shown through metaphors of heat, boiling, bubbling, simmering, burning. How do I find out more about conceptual metaphors? Listen to our interactive discussion panel.
So hopefully that video gave you a bit of understanding about what conceptual metaphors are. I'm now going to talk about conceptual metaphors in advertising. So the first thing that I wanted to stress is that conceptual metaphors are everywhere, and often we don't even notice them. We found this out when we were preparing this presentation. It was really hard to work out what metaphors were, where they were. It's so hard to spot them because we use them so frequently. So I decided to look on some websites that I often shop on and see if I could spot the metaphors used in the adverts. The first one that I found was for Red Bull. The tagline is, "Red Bull gives you wings." Now, what does this suggest? The noun wings connotes energy. Obviously, this is an energy drink. So they're suggesting that through drinking this, you'll get masses and masses of energy that will give you the ability to do impossible things. Now, I thought it'd be quite interesting to see what this advert would look like without metaphors. So, similar concept, but portrayed without a metaphor. Red Bull contains caffeine, which stimulates the central nervous system. It's not quite as effective. This is an example of how metaphors can be used to persuade consumers to purchase products. Now we've got this organic nature bar, Taste of Nature. So the title of the bar suggests that this is a very natural product. It's organic, healthy, inartificial and pure. It's the closest to tasting nature that you could get. Again, this influences consumers to buy it because they will then live a healthy lifestyle, be connected to nature. Now we're moving on to some cosmetic brands. Here we've got Estee Lauder lipstick. Let's take a closer look at some of the metaphors they've used. Here we have the metaphor, sculpt your lips with light. What does this suggest? Well, firstly, the verb sculpt connotes artwork, beauty and precision. To me, this suggests that if you wear this lipstick, you'll become a piece of art. You can transform and control the way you look. Then we've got light. Now the noun light connotes shininess and glossiness, and also the idea of spotlight and attraction. To me, if you wear this lipstick, you will attract people and be desirable. Now we've got another lipstick called Revolution Satin Kiss. Let's take a closer look at the metaphors here. So we've got coat your lips in a kiss of satin. Now, what does this suggest to the consumer? Here, the noun kiss is a very flirty, sexy, sweet noun, and to me has lots of links to femininity. Similarly, we've got satin. Now, satin's a very expensive, luxurious fabric, and it's very soft and feminine. Through wearing this lipstick, you will appear expensive. Now moving on to perfume. Perfume is an industry that I've noticed an absolute prevalence of metaphors. Here's just one example that I found. So here we've got a declaration of carefree youth. To me, this really suggests the idea of simplicity, peacefulness and calmness, and also the aspect of youth is very playful. Children and playfulness are very often connected. Similarly, we've got portal to simplicity. To me, this suggests that by wearing this perfume, everything in your life will become simple. Obviously, this is not possible, but this metaphor is so much stronger than if you were to say, if you wear this perfume, you'll smell nice or you'll smell like vanilla. It really sells it to the consumer. We've now got liquid embodiment of pure glowing sunshine. To me, this connotes happiness, peace, evokes purity and radiance. Again, it's really selling the product rather than just saying that you'll smell like this or you will attract people because you'll smell so amazing. It's instead really connecting quite abstract ideas of happiness and radiance. Now, that's it for me, sort of analysing them, but I just wanted to ask you guys what your favourite metaphors were. So which ones appealed to you the most, or out of all of the adverts, which one would persuade you to buy the product?
I think for me, it would definitely have to be the Marc Jacobs Daisy perfume, because the metaphors evoke so much strong imagery that I think as a consumer, it'd have to be a no-brainer to buy it.
Yeah, I agree.
For me, oh, sorry.
You go.
For me, I liked the one where it said kiss of satin, because like you said, the satin is like, it feels luxurious, and I also feel like the satin promotes how it would feel on your lips as well.
Yeah, I was going to say the same as Millie, actually. I really like that metaphor. But I do think the Red Bull metaphor is most interesting because it's so, it stares us in the face because it's around us all the time, but you don't even think of it as a metaphor. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I agree completely. Have you guys got anything that you want to ask me about any of the things that I chose?
Why do you think a lot of consumers like to use metaphors in their advertising? What do you think is their means for that?
I think it's mostly because the way you sell a product is through connecting with the consumer's sort of emotions and identity. And if you were just to say, like I did with the Red Bull advert, you know, this will stimulate your nervous system, it will give you energy. It just doesn't quite have the same punch. Whereas when you sort of conceal these ideas behind quite elaborate and quite, I don't know, I'm not sure what the word is, but it really evokes imagery. And I think that that connects with the consumer and they can almost imagine how they'll feel once they consume or use the product.
Yeah, that's true. It's very, it's a mental process, I guess, using a metaphor.
Definitely.
I've got a question. So do you think that the vocab used in these conceptual metaphors for cosmetics are distinctly different for male and female products?
Yeah, so obviously I focus on female products just based on what I consume. But when I quickly looked at sort of like a male equivalent for a perfume, it was the Hugo Boss Men. And it was so interesting because the nouns and verbs used for them, for example, things like you're driven, your rituals, your daily quests, primed to succeed, and competitive, they're all about their qualities. Whereas I feel like the adverts that are more tailored towards women are more about their features, sort of their beauty. So it's just interesting that it sort of shows how in this advertisement, maybe women and men have different values and they'll approach it differently. So women are much more targeted towards beauty, whereas men are targeted towards strength.
My question is, why do you think you found so many conceptual metaphors in the cosmetics and perfume industry?
I think it's because whilst they can use images of people sort of wearing these products, or they could make videos that sort of show what the outcome of it is, when you're reading stuff, I don't think you'd be as sold if it was like, buy this red lipstick to make your lips red, or this perfume will make you smell like sweets. It just doesn't sell it in quite the same way that the conceptual metaphors do. So I think using those, it really sort of creates a story behind the product, and that is what influences people to buy it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I agree.
Yeah, perfect. Well, in that case, I will move on to you, Mia, so that you can start your part of your presentation.
So I'm going to be talking about conceptual metaphors in politics with a focus on Boris Johnson's speech in May 2016 regarding Brexit. So again, like Lauren said, metaphors are a part of everyday life, and I decided to choose quite a niche topic doing political speeches. And it was actually really interesting to explore all the different conceptual metaphors that you find hearing on the news in everyday life. So here are a few examples I found in Boris's speech. So the first conceptual metaphor we've got is, to understand our predicament and the trap we're in, we need to go back to the immediate post-war period and the agony and shame of a broken continent. So that's the quote from the speech, but the actual metaphor is trap, which I've just highlighted there. So the main things that it suggests is it implies Britain being stuck in a rut with the stay or leave vote, which is obviously a massive conundrum in the UK. It also implies that sense of a physical restraint, has strong connotations with the trap animals, the fact that they can't get out. And the first person plural pronouns, our predicament, the trap that we're in, signifies that inability to move and the fact that we couldn't change the current situation without the outcome of the stay or leave vote. The next quote that we've got from the speech is, their inspired idea was to weave a cat's cradle of supernatural legislation that would not only bind the former combatants together, but create a new sensation of Europeanness. And I've just highlighted again the metaphor, which is bind. So I think this suggests, obviously, the connotations of bind is to tie someone up physically. But in the sense of the European Union and the Brexit, it implies that binding of freedom regarding the decision to stay or leave in the UK. Everyone was so conflicted with each other's votes. It could also potentially imply a lack of autonomy and power, especially because the decision was up to the UK citizens. So it takes the power out of the hands of the government. The next quote we've got is, the EU system is a ratchet hauling us ever further into a federal structure. So we've got hauling as the metaphor here. I think this suggests obviously moving from one place to another, but also the restriction of movement or the lack of freedom that we've got in the fact that we had to wait so long for the stay or leave vote outcome that everyone was very agitated, not really sure what was happening. And I'd say the pronoun us that's used there appeals to the audience as a sense of togetherness, that feelings of unity. Everyone knew they were kind of in the same boat with waiting for the outcome of the vote. The next quote we've got is, how can you stop us from being dragged in and from being made to pay? Again, we've got a similar metaphor to hauled in with dragged in, really meaning the same thing, essentially. It does give that mental image of someone being manhandled, which supports that lack of movement and freedom that I was talking about in the previous slide. And also the use of present tense shows that it was an ongoing issue at the time and was causing havoc. And essentially today, we're still feeling the repercussions of the leave vote. The next quote we've got is, we've proven to ourselves time and time again that we cannot change the direction, with direction being the metaphor. So it suggests essentially a path that something or someone moves along to get to a certain place. This could mean the inability to change direction, relating to the real underlying message of the whole speech, which is the restriction on freedom of movement. That's the main underlying message throughout every single metaphor that I've picked out. Boris implies in his speech that Britain can't be trusted to self-govern. Therefore, he wasn't optimistic with the outcome of the vote. He didn't really have faith in the UK citizens to choose the right vote. The next metaphor we've got is, I believe we would be mad not to take this once in a lifetime chance to walk through that door, because the truth is, it is not we who have changed. So we've got door as the main metaphor here. I think the door refers to the EU as a whole building. implying that this is Britain's only chance to leave the EU, and they need to take the opportunity while they can, because it's probably something that won't come around that often. And we've got that recurring theme through all of the metaphors. It seems to be of unjust entrapment. Although the UK citizens had the option to choose stay or leave, it's being made across, it comes across as that we're entrapped when actually we did have the decision ourselves. The next quote that we've got is, "We can see the sunlit meadows beyond. I believe we'd be mad not to take this once in a lifetime chance to walk through that door, because the truth is not we who have changed." So we've got the metaphor here is sunlit, and this means like happiness or prosperity. It implies British people are being held in that enclosed space without being able to see the sunlight outside, a bit similar to the door that I was talking about earlier. And also they have the opportunity to go out, walk out the door and go into the light. It means that they should really take the opportunity to leave the EU whilst they can. And also British people have the opportunity to regain their autonomy by way of the referendum. It's giving the UK citizens their chance to choose. So I've just finished my part, and I just wanted to ask you guys a few questions about the political speeches. For you guys, which of was your favourite metaphor described?
For me, I personally like can you just remind me exactly what it was? Was it the sunlit?
The sunlit one, yeah.
Yeah, I really liked that, the sort of imagery of hope that it conveys. And I just think that was very strong to really present sort of what's on the other side, what could be the sort of opportunities that face us with this decision.
Yeah, I totally agree with that one.
I don't think I have a particular favourite, but I did find it really interesting how there were so many reoccurring ones about restriction of movement and freedom. I feel like when I listen to political speeches, I never feel like they actually outwardly speak about restriction of movement. So yeah, I found that really interesting.
Yeah, I liked dragged in. I felt like it was a very powerful metaphor, and I think it really got across exactly Boris's opinion on the subject, which I think is why a lot of politicians use these conceptual metaphors, because it doesn't only get across their opinion, but also try and persuades the public to view it in that certain way as well.
Yeah, that's really good. Did you guys have any questions that you wanted to ask me regarding my research on the political speech?
So mine's not actually a question. I just found it really interesting in your presentation. I only picked up on two, but as I said, we use them all the time. But you actually yourself used the metaphors, taking the power out of the hands of the government and in the same boat. So I just thought I would highlight that just to prove how prevalent metaphors are in our everyday talk.
Yeah, it's really true. Like we were saying, you use a metaphor without even sometimes realizing that you're even using a metaphor, or identifying that you're using a metaphor in a sentence.
Definitely.
So my question for Mia, do you think there's a theme of vocab normally used in political speeches, or do you think it's kind of random to fit what they're saying?
I mean, like you were saying before, the similar conceptual metaphors that I identified was the dragged in, hauling. It all seemed to be moving you from one place to another that you didn't potentially want to be in. And like I said before, the fact that the UK citizens had the vote, it seemed kind of unjust to use that kind of metaphor in the political speeches.
Yeah.
My question for you is, why do you think so many, in your opinion, why do you think so many politicians use conceptual metaphors in their speeches?
I think in a way, politicians are so good at kind of hiding themselves away. And although they're constantly doing speeches in front of millions of people watching, they're kind of deflecting the blame off of themselves. Like Boris constantly says, how he doesn't have faith in the UK citizens by using these conceptual metaphors, kind of takes the heat off himself when he was in a position where there was so much expectation on him to sort out Brexit and the referendum, that the conceptual metaphors kind of takes the heat off of him.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
So that's my part done. I'm now going to hand over to Millie, who's going to talk about conceptual metaphors in COVID-19 news articles.
Thank you, Mia. Yeah, so I'm going to be looking at news articles on COVID-19 vaccines. So before we go on to the news article, I thought I'd just step into what we normally see of conceptual metaphors in medicine. So in everyday life, we kind of use battle or war-like vocab. So fight an infection, battle against COVID-19, the virus will not surrender, and defeat the virus. So this is the news article I've chosen to talk about. So it is a 2023 news article about vaccine boosters. So let's have a look at what metaphors we can find in there. So these are the first four that I found in this the headline and the start paragraph of this. So the first one we've got is charter course. So what do we think this suggests? So this suggests that maybe scientists don't really know what they're doing, but it's kind of hiding this in a chart, like the metaphor. And for this to be in the headline, it's quite eye-catching to the readers. So the next one we have is a roller coaster ride of hope. So this suggests that the experience has been difficult, but explaining it in a fun way to hide the extent of harm and the bad reaction it had from many people. So yeah, this using a roller coaster, which you wouldn't expect to see in an article about medicine. So here we've got fend off infection. So this is a familiar conceptual metaphor used in medicine, the battle-like vocab that I was talking about. So this is almost is familiarizing itself with the public using this vocab, which they would use as well. So tailored to, I found this very interesting because it's suggesting that this booster vaccine is specifically made for this certain strain. It's almost encouraging people at that certain time where the strain is current to get this vaccine, which I thought was very interesting. So what do these metaphors portray collectively for this article? So with the roller coaster, it's describing the COVID vaccine situation through fun words, fun activities, almost hiding the severity, which is quite eye-catching as well. They're encouraging people to get the vaccine. I think using these metaphors, they aren't just being informative, they are using some vocab which is almost lighthearted, so the public are encouraged to get their vaccine. They're trying to prove the effectiveness of the vaccine. So they're saying that, again, with the tailored to and the fending off, like it has effectiveness. If you get the vaccine, it's proving that. So I have a question for you guys. So what are your reactions to reading this article, and what effect do these metaphors have on your view of the vaccine?
So I think what you've sort of highlighted as what a typical reader would take from it is what I took from it. So like you said, the roller coaster ride, I think that's so interesting because it is presenting it in a fun way. And, you know, getting a vaccination is not fun. And it's also a very serious topic, but the sort of light-hearted, almost humour in it is quite influential for people. And someone might read that and think, you know, it's not so bad. It's quite light-hearted. We've got hope as well in there. So roller coaster ride of hope, sort of really showing that we've gone through a lot, but it's going through it in a sort of light-hearted way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with Lauren. I think it's so interesting how they use like really common metaphors that we use in everyday life in an article which is on quite a serious topic. I just think it's quite interesting that they're using that type of discourse to engage us and persuade us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with what Jess and Lauren have said. I think it's really interesting as well is if you just left the metaphors and took out the rest of the paragraph is you probably would have no idea that this is talking about a COVID-19 vaccine with the use of a roller coaster ride of hope, and things like that. If you took out the rest of the context, you'd probably have no idea that it's about something like a vaccine and such a serious pandemic as COVID-19.
Yeah, definitely. Do you guys have any questions at all?
The only one I've got is about whether you think, and you have touched on this slightly, if you think that articles like these that include so many metaphors had any influence on encouraging more people to get vaccinated?
Yeah, so I think most people see news articles as just informative, but you don't realize how many metaphors they're using. So I think using these metaphors is kind of getting on the same level as the public, and that's kind of encouragement because it's using lighthearted vocab and also like being familiar with the battle-like vocab. So yeah, I think it would be encouraging.
I have a question. So when I was reading it, obviously I said that it's quite regular discourse that we have in everyday lives. Why do you think they choose to use that type of discourse as opposed to a more formal discourse?
I think because they're trying to get their blanket discourse so everyone can kind of understand, it's clear, and then with these inflections of the metaphors, as I said, it makes it more lighthearted, so it's just understandable for the reader to kind of gain their view from reading this article.
Yeah, that's true. It's targeting like the whole population.
Yeah.
My question was, do you think that any of the conceptual metaphors that you've identified swayed the consumer's mind in any way as to which vaccine they should get?
I think the tailored to is very specific in saying that this booster vaccine is tailored to a certain strain. So yeah, I think so. I think people will do lots of research as well in news articles as to what vaccine they're going to get.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah. Well, thanks for those questions. I'm now going to hand over to Jess for the final part of our discussion.
Amazing. Thank you, Millie. So I'm look at conceptual metaphors in travel writing, specifically a Lonely Planet article on the Edinburgh Fringe. I chose to look at travel writing because a lot of travel writing is just very persuasive, and obviously they are trying to draw their audience in to persuade them to go to a particular place. And I chose the Edinburgh Fringe because it's not just a sunny beach holiday, it's a festival with a lot of rich culture. So this is the start of the article that I chose to look at. I picked out two metaphors here. The first one is fledgling. So it's talking about a fledgling the festival being a fledgling festival, and fledgling is normally used to describe birds have just left the nest, which I thought was really interesting, and it shows that this festival is very new and very young, and it brings a natural element to the festival. So it's creating a bad guy out of these theatre troupes that I mentioned previously, and suggests that the festival is a true part of the city's culture because they have gatecrashed this festival, this fledgling festival. Then I looked at mushroomed. So mushroomed means to spread and develop quickly, but obviously mushroom is also another natural metaphor. It suggests that it happened unintentionally, just as mushrooms spread in nature. It happens so spontaneously, which shows just how the festival got started. I then looked at other sections of the article about food and drink, and these used a lot of combination metaphors. So spring up, soak up, and shake off were three that I looked at originally. Spring up is a metaphor which gives life and character to the stalls and pop-up bars that it's talking about. This entices the reader because it alludes to themes of spontaneity and fun, and this is exactly what people are looking for when they're going on a festival or going on holiday even. Soak up is the next one. This metaphorical language is often used with pleasant experiences, like you're going on holiday, you're going to soak up the sun, you're going to soak up the atmosphere. And this gives the idea that the person involved is having a really enjoyable and relaxing time, which is, again, a perfect way to sell this festival. Shake Off suggests that this is a very easy and stress-free festival. It takes yourself out of a busy situation. The writer isn't suggesting here that the reader would be uncomfortable or stressed by the crowds. It's just saying to shake it off, just like maybe your dog would do with some water. Like, it's very carefree. Digest and make a beeline. So digest is relating, so it says for a quiet wine while you digest your intake of culture. So this is relating to the intake of culture that the person will receive, suggesting that it should be taken in as if it were a fundamental part of living, or indeed that the culture is so rich that it is necessary to take some time to fully comprehend it, just like digesting food is a necessary part of our everyday lives. Make a beeline is another natural reference, another reference to nature, because it is necessary for a bee to focus on its destination to a flower. And in this case, the article is suggesting that you cannot miss the drink experiences that they are recommending. So what do these metaphors portray within the article? So the natural metaphors reference nature, and they suggest how rooted in the culture the festival is, as if it's always been a part of the city's history and life. And it also just suggests that it wasn't man-made. Common actions are also regularly used, like the shake off and the soak up, which are used for the reader's understanding. And language related to stress-free and relaxing environments interests the reader in the destination. So this will happen in all travel writing, and it just makes the reader feel as if they really want to go to that place. So yeah, that's everything from me. I do have a question for you guys. Would the use of these metaphors in this article make you want to go to that festival? Or if there were metaphors in travel writing, would that make you want to go to the destination?
For me, I think the sort of metaphors that are really rooted in the nature and sort of everything natural, they're very persuasive, because we often connote nature with sort of tranquility and things like that. So it presents the festival as somewhere desirable to go. And then the contrast with that was sort of the excitement of what's on offer, the verbs you used for the drinks to make them seem energetic. That sort of almost contrasts the tranquility. So they offer a really rounded view of what the festival would be like through two quite different types of metaphors.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't even pick up on that, but that's such a good view of the article.
I think for me, it would definitely make me want to go to the festival. The use of the conceptual metaphors kind of evokes such a strong imagery, like you were saying with the drinks. It does really make you want to visit that festival.
Yeah.
I think for me, sorry, I think that I love how it's aimed at people who like nature, so it's specifically aimed at them. So for me, it's so enticing hearing these like nature vocabs and spring up, soak up. It's really wanting me to go.
Yeah, and they really know their audience as well, with the metaphors that they're using. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Yeah, so the one I wanted to ask you is, out of all of the ones you identified there, which do you think is the most sort of powerful? Because obviously this is about language and power. Which has the most power of persuasion? Which do you think is the most influential metaphor that they've used?
I don't think I can pick out just one. I think I like the ones where it's a combination of words. So like soak up and shake off, and I can't remember what the other one was. Spring up. I think these three give it such an active feel. They make you feel like you're part of it and like you're doing something within the article. So they make the reader a part of it already, even though you haven't been there and you haven't gone, but you want to go because you are already active in the participation of it.
Yeah, I really like that. It sort of like immerses you into the scene.
Yeah, exactly.
I just wanted to ask you, Jess, which is your favourite conceptual metaphor? Which do you think best emphasises and evokes the most imagery?
The most imagery, I would say, make a beeline. I think we use that every day, but make a beeline, it's so, you know exactly what it means. You're going directly towards something. And I think you can just really vision yourself like walking through the city and just heading straight to where they want you to go. So I think that one's probably the most, got the most imagery with it.
Yeah, I agree.
So my question for you, Jess, do you think these metaphors accurately describe the festival, or is it just emphasizing for advertising purposes?
Well, having never been to the festival, I couldn't say exactly. So I'm going to say that most likely it's for advertising purposes. Everybody in travel writing is going to slightly exaggerate the truth. Maybe not the truth, but slightly exaggerate the situation so that people really want to go, make it seem just a little bit better than it actually is, to draw people, because
I
it
guess
is.
That also shows the power of them as well.
Yeah, exactly, because you read it and obviously we all want to go now because it sounds so great. And that's all from the use of these metaphors, which I just think is so interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe we should all go and then we can decide whether the metaphors accurately present the festival or not.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay, well, that's the end of our presentation. Thank you very much for listening. And here's a list of our sources as well. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much, and thank you everyone for listening too.